Welcome to the Tuesday Review. I'm Nathan, as always, joined by James and Callum in the studio. How you going, guys?
Good.
Yeah, good.
And also, we're joined by a special guest, amazing filmmaker, visionary director,
the Aaron
writer, producer, the Aaron McJames. How you going, Aaron?
Yeah, thanks for having me back again.
Yeah, no, thanks for being here. We are very lucky.
Yeah, we just finished our review or our interview of Aaron for his film Astro Loco, and we just thought we'd take the opportunity while he's here to talk about movies and stuff that he likes, stuff that we like.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no rules. There's no.
Well, I think we'll start off hot. We just finished up our 100th Tuesday Review episode, and a key part of that was like our favorite things, because we've known each other since high school, but we don't know everything. So we had this whole thing about what's your favorite books, your blah blah blah. What's your favorite movie? If you had to pick one, what's your favorite movie?
Well, it's funny because I like to think that I don't have a favorite movie.
Yeah.
But the movie that jumped into my head when you said that was Demons. Lamberto Bava.
I talked about that a few episodes back. On a review roundtable we did where we just talk about movies we watched. That was one of the movies I had.
Yeah, that blew my mind when I saw that. I still can't believe what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
If I put that on, I can't believe what I'm seeing on the screen.
That's so cool. I talked about how like there's a very specific feeling you get from movies like that, where it's this horrible like violent movie, but it feels comforting. I don't know if you agree with that. Maybe I'm just a weirdo. It's the very specific. It's like a feeling of nostalgia, like the 80s kind of thing, but also like horror movies with like that. It's like, I don't know. It's its own specific.
Yeah, it's a lot more comforting to me now than when I first saw it.
Well, yeah. It's a different feeling, yeah. But yeah, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah,
for a one like favorite.
Yeah,
a gut reaction, I guess.
Yeah, it was a gut reaction to that, because it's just the brazen nature of what has been put on screen. This is someone who you think that they're just sitting back going, why not?
Yeah,
why not? Like people are saying you can't do this, and they're going, why not?
Yeah, I think that's what movies need, is not playing it safe. And like we were before we were recording, we were talking about Cronenberg, and it's just like, don't do what people expect, don't do things that make people feel comfortable, like challenge people.
Yeah, and The Fly, Cronenberg's version of The Fly is one of my favorite films as well.
Yeah, it's like, that's what, I mean, I know it's cliche, but like art should confront you or whatever
It should be challenging.
Yeah.
Have you seen brand new Cherry Flavour on Netflix?
No.
That's kind of Cronenberg.
I didn't watch it. Was it good?
I thought it was
incredible.
amazing, and you can. There's definitely inspirations. It's not heavy, but there's inspirations from Cronenberg. There's a bit of
big
body
time.
horror. David Lynch meets Cronenberg.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's like, the thing is, we always say is a lot of the times now Netflix and all big streaming and even the movie studios, it's movie by committee. They're made to hit the beats to get bums in seats. But brand new Cherry Flavour is one of the exceptions. It was released this year.
Very bold,
Very bold, and it's got that sort of Cronenberg Lynchian element to it, where there's like non-spoilery, but a girl makes we'll say a pact with
like a
a
Faustian
witch,
pact,
like a bruja, like a sort of like a Latin American inspired kind of witch lady, and her payment is kittens. And so the main character basically has to throw up these kittens as payment for this lady. The kitten is like symbolic of vitality or whatever.
When you say throw up,
regurgitate.
Actually, yeah, okay.
Like kittens.
No.
And so it's like the kitten is like symbolic for like life force and power and all that kind of stuff.
And how does she escape this?
And how does she escape this Faustian deal? And like, it gets like worse when she's like, I'm not throwing them up anymore. What are you going to do about it? And then there's sort of all kind of body horror involved. Like, this witch will get her kittens.
It's this really surreal, slick, really cinematic. It's really cinematic Netflix original, shot in 4K, so it looks awesome. But it has this real not confronting, but they did what they wanted.
Yeah,
which is like
it can
we used
be
to talk.
shocking,
We used to talk about Netflix in the early days about how it's like, you know, people go to Netflix because like they can get their vision out. It's not tampered by like TV networks or whatever. It's changed a bit now, but with you know, they've been retroactively altering some of their TV shows to make them a bit safer. But Brand New Cherry Flavor isn't like offensive as such, but it's certainly like
shocking.
It's a vision.
I think Netflix is a weird place. Because I think for a bit it was definitely just movie by committee, and they still throw out, because they release tons of content, they still throw out a lot of that stuff that's sort of just like it's made for everyone, so it's made for no one kind of thing. But every now and again we get those sort of Cronenbergian influenced originals, or some of that weirder stuff that I really like. So it's good. It does still come out every now and again.
Yeah, we were talking about it before, where the Netflix model is just that they put out everything, and then just whatever finds its audience finds its audience.
Occasionally they hit a winner.
Yeah. I mean, the sad thing is like they left Brand New Cherry Flavor semi-open-ended, but apparently it's like a one-and-done situation.
No,
so
I was fine with the ending.
You get this hint of the larger world that like I really want to see. Like it's like graphic novel kind of potential. Like they could continue it on, but I think that is comfortable with a limited season.
Yeah, it's a limited series.
Yeah, but I definitely recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's incredible.
I mean, was there a name attached to it, like a director or a name, something that when that person wants to do something else, they can basically make that almost like the second season, if you will. You know, people go, I can't wait to see what this person
it's 81% Rotten Tomatoes. It's like the darling of like hipster Netflix people. So like they can pretty much do what they want. But it's the program creators are Nick Antosca and Lenore Zion, and they're the showrunners, so to speak. But I think that with the goodwill they would have earned through Netflix, they can get whatever they want made on Netflix.
See, but just because we liked it doesn't mean it was ultimately
I don't know how successful it was.
Rotten Tomatoes loves it.
Yeah,
which,
but
that doesn't mean anything.
Although, like Squid Game is
that's true.
Sort of,
that's
was completely different. But it's encouraging.
Yeah,
that we're seeing more successful.
But
multicultural
but that was very clearly a success. Like they
I'm talking about the major success. Obviously, Squid Game is everywhere.
I don't know.
Society would be weird if we were treating Brand New Cherry Flavor the way we treat Squid Game.
I don't know. We got off track here. We were talking to Aaron about his.
Hey, we got onto Cronenberg, and that put me onto
talking to a non-Cronenberg movie.
Talking about demons.
We started talking about demons.
See, this is what happens after that first hour.
Yeah. So we told you we just start talking bullshit and we don't stop. So this is how it works.
Yeah. Sorry, Aaron. What was the last movie you watched?
The last movie I watched.
Or memorable movie,
memorable films.
Well, so actually the last movie I watched was I revisited Master and Commander.
Oh, that's a good one.
With Russell Crowe?
Yes.
I haven't seen that in a long time.
And I quite enjoyed it. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen it since I saw it at the cinema. And I watched it at home, and I pleasantly surprised. In fact, what was amazing was the sound design. Because I'm like a surround sound nerd. I've got the full surround sound thing.
The Dolby Atmos.
Yeah. And this was like ball tearing.
Shakes your house.
You can just hear those cannonballs ripping through your curtains.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, that's one of those movies where you're like, why weren't more people talking about this? Why wasn't this a big franchise? Because it's based on a book series of like 10 or 15 books. And they were planning to make more. I guess it just didn't do well enough. And so it's a shame because you watch it and you're like, why wasn't this the biggest movie? Why wasn't there 10 of these?
I wondered the same thing. And so then I went and looked at some of the Rotten Tomatoes reviews.
Yeah.
And I got the feeling that particularly in the States, I don't think it was bombastic enough for them. It wasn't Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, because there are like quieter character moments, and there's like a whole subplot about like him cataloging the birds on the island or whatever. Yeah,
it's a very gentle story, I would say. It's not like swashbuckling adventure in the high seas.
Yeah. I guess it's like what we talked about last week. I guess people just want explosions and that's it.
Yeah.
But it's also great because it came out at like the perfect time where CGI was a thing, but it wasn't, the whole movie wasn't just,
it's like you say,
CGI.
invisible CGI.
Yeah, like they did a lot of stuff with like the ships and
and look, because we get visually, I suppose trained, and as things get better, we sort of, I suppose our what's the word, our aptitude or our sort of our literacy for that, rises with the technology. Some of the stuff was kind of obvious, I would think.
This is an interesting thing we should talk about, since we have a director in the studio with us. Good or not, we heap a lot of shit on CGI in this studio, because we watch all the Marvel movies, all the Star Wars movies, if they ever make any more, which we'll hate. But like we notice bad CG where sometimes I guess people don't. Like we'll be watching like Shang-Chi for example. There were some moments where I'd look over at James and he's just shaking his head at like some of the real nasty looking CG.
Yeah.
So I'm like, as a filmmaker yourself, how do you, when you're watching a film, do you pick up on this, that, and everything else, or does it just kind of wash over you like it does any other audience member?
It
especially with like visual effects in mind.
Yeah, look, it depends. I enjoy turning my, scrutineering brain off, and just enjoying it like a punter. But there is stuff that comes up that I go, like I'm not a fan of CG either. I would prefer practical effects that look like puppets.
Yeah.
Than CG that's pretending they're not puppets.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
I feel like that's also probably the opinion of most directors as well. Nobody likes.
But then why do we keep getting these movies?
Because it's an
studios.
Industry. Yeah, studios. It's
an audience
industry.
expectation.
Have you ever seen Deathstalker? And I know I've mentioned that a lot. No, but have you ever seen any?
Callum,
No,
please.
let me get to a point.
Not in a long time, but the score is incredible.
Yeah, well, the reason I mentioned that is because you mentioned like puppets and like real stuff. When we watched it, out of nowhere, they're just like huge dudes in suits, and there's like a puppet.
The Pigman.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just got Deathstalker on my mind lately.
I actually can't remember the musician's name, but Chopping Mall is actually his more superior score.
A man of culture, I see.
We have a discerning audience member with us today.
No, but I think our problem is like the overuse of CGI, where there was a tipping point in the mid 2000s or late 2000s. Probably once Avatar came out, it was game over. Where it's just like they gave up on trying to make big movies that looked real, and were just like, it's all animated because it's photorealistic and people don't care.
I have a theory on this, and it's a theory, so it's probably wrong. But my theory is that...
That's our whole show.
Yeah.
You fit right in.
My theory is that multiplex tickets have become so expensive that the person shelling out... sometimes you got to think about people with families, they're shelling out over $100 to take the family there. They want to feel as though they got something.
Yeah.
And I always had in my mind that if those Star Wars prequels were better movies, they wouldn't have been as commercially successful.
Well, kids like CGI. I mean, we're kind of lucky. CGI when we were kids wasn't a huge thing. Not really.
I think...
But I think kids now love it.
That's an interesting point, because I think with Star Wars it's different, because if you slap the Star Wars name on it, you're going to make money.
Yeah.
So if they were really good, I think not only would they have been really successful, but they would have, like, the train would have kept going, rather than, like, because it's slowed down for about 10 years after Revenge of the Sith. But I think in non-recognizable branded movies, I think you're right. Like, if it is well made, like more practical, like we just talked about Master and Commander, like if it does have a slower side to it, if it does have a sort of more grounded, old school way of making things, I think now younger audiences, and even older audiences too, who just got used to it over time, they wouldn't be as engaged by it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we look at where like the big use of CGI started in kids' films primarily.
I guess.
I'm like, I wonder if it's like a holdover from that, where it's like, well, it's used in like the Marvel movies, for example. They do get a bit more mature. Like Eternals certainly isn't a kids' movie. But I think that maybe it's like an industry thing where you want to appeal to the broadest base possible, not necessarily for the money.
It's because they can do whatever they want now with CGI, and they don't have to worry about
also
going...
they can fix a lot of stuff later on. Or they can. Its necessity is sometimes born from. Yeah. It's sometimes born out of necessity.
I think it's also controllable.
Yes.
Like they can control the outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, a CG car chase is in a jar.
Yeah.
You know, they know the parameters. It's not like they're sealing off the city and they're asking these wild
and
stunt drivers
especially those types of scenes where you can do once. Well, if you ruin it, it's done.
Well, you look at Zack Snyder's Justice League. I personally haven't seen it, but like the CGI elements look completely different from like the cinematic version of Justice League to Zack Snyder's. And I thought that was interesting to see that I'm assuming it was all filmed, right?
Like I think they actually gave him the budget to go back and fill it in. Yeah.
My bad.
Anyway.
I was watching on Corridor Crew's YouTube channel today. They had Seth Rogen on recently, and they were going back through his movies, and they were talking to him about the CG.
Yeah.
And the movie that had almost no CG was Green Hornet. So I feel like there's also an element of bad luck. Where it's like he made this movie with like no CG.
That's also the director probably who's known for...
But it was also fucking expensive.
Yeah.
And he said this is a $100 million movie and it bombed. And so it's like they can't take that risk again.
So Green Hornet has the least green screen?
Yeah. Yes, essentially. And then they go through his other movies and there's like, well, you know, obviously it kind of, in the long run, it kind of cost less in some of his movies.
Yeah, but I think they still spend so much money on them, whether they're practical or CGI. The CGI stuff doesn't age well and it doesn't look as good.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you might as well spend the money and do it realistically.
Here's the thing about the CG that I've always wondered, and I wondered this around the time that I saw Gladiator, another Russell Crowe film. I started to notice that CG that looked acceptable on the big screen looked fake as all crap on TV. And I was going, what's happening? Is the CG, as they scale down the image...
Maybe because you're closer to the screen.
Because the CG is designed to match up with the celluloid.
Yeah.
And I'm going, are those two elements scaling differently as they come down?
Possibly. They're getting mastered for Blu-ray or whatever else differently.
I'm going, like, does the integrity of celluloid as it scales down...
Yeah.
Does something change in a different way than CG as it scales down?
That's also an interesting point.
Becomes like the digital image on your Blu-ray or TV like makes everything more sharp. And maybe it makes the CGI
I can
more
never
obvious.
quite put my finger on it because I remember in the Colosseum where he's fighting the tigers. I saw the ad on TV before I went and saw it at the cinema. Yeah. It looked fake as all get out. Yeah. Going, gee, that's really crappy. And when I went to the cinema, it was flawless.
And is it also like lighting conditions? Because like especially on TVs, right, they project the image differently than it would get projected on a screen, and so the picture will be lighter, will be darker. Like on modern TVs now, if I'm watching a Netflix original, say it supports Dolby Vision or whatever, it's probably mastered for Dolby Vision. So if I'm watching it without Dolby Vision, I'm getting maybe a different picture than it's intended. True. So the CG would look a little different depending on the circumstances of how you're watching it at home with the light on, the light off versus the tele's capability.
Yeah, but I've experienced this a few times where I've seen the trailer and thought that looks really fake. And that moment has come on the big screen, and gone, and it hasn't jarred me the way it did when I saw it on TV.
Leads to an interesting question as well. So, for instance, now we've got, say, Disney Plus Premier Access at home. Like they're releasing stuff at home as well as cinemas at the same time. Are they still mastering it for the cinema, especially in a COVID
They would,
time? Would they be mastering it for the cinema, or would they be mastering it so it looks good on the television first, considering we have a pandemic at the moment?
Keep in mind that we're just unlucky in Australia where we don't get movies when they're released elsewhere. They're still going to be releasing them for American audiences because American cinemas are still open.
They're still doing the dual release on streaming, and so like it's definitely... But it's also, as we've discussed before, where it's like most audiences don't really care at the end of the day whether it looks bad or not. And so... like as long as it's big and loud and has explosions, like who cares how they master it? Like most people don't. It's just people like us who would notice and who have
big and loud and explosions. That's getting back to my thing about
They want their money's worth.
Exactly. People want their money's worth. They've got to check. They want the theme park.
They want to turn their brains off.
But that's fine. But I'm like, why can't we have movies like they were in the 80s or 90s that have big explosion but are practical,
like Rambo?
Yeah, like it's changed now where it's like it's gone completely everything now has to be safe, family, lots of CGI.
I feel like every now and again they try and it fails. Like we got was it the Dark Crystal TV show?
But that was great though.
No, it was amazing, but it didn't make Netflix enough money and they cancelled it. But they had the props and everything still. Everything was made.
That's the thing though. It's like at what they're just churning stuff out to generate a profit, and it's not about the movies at all.
No.
Like it's not about the actual art of it, which look, filmmaking has always been about making money. But I feel like it's gotten to a point now with the internet and streaming and stuff where it's like they've completely lost all regard for making good movies.
Do you think
mainstream movies?
Do you think that's because of the mentality of the studios changed more than the directors? Because I feel like if you have enough passion to like want to make a film, you know it's going to be tough.
It's because it's also back in the day, like if you were a movie studio, you made movies. Now, if you're a movie studio,
you make IPs.
You make IP, and you have a mobile game, and you have a TV show, and you have
It also sort of goes back to Aaron's point where he said, like people want to feel like they got their money's worth, and maybe going for a 3-hour lazy drama is going to make the kids aren't going to be able to sit through that. They're going to want to make people feel like they got their money's worth.
You can remember televisions at home are much larger now, and so a lazy drama, someone can say, well, I could have seen that at home.
Yeah.
I've got a massive TV. Like I can sit really close to it and get the same sort of...
That's also true.
But my point is like, why can't we have movies that get us to go see it on the big screen? That like something like Ben-Hur or Cleopatra, where it's like they actually built all that stuff. They actually had all those people. Yeah, so they had all those people on screen. It's like that would get me to go to the cinema. But they don't do that anymore because it costs too much and it's too hard to control, like you said.
Reminds me of our Lord of the Rings discussion, how they actually like did things for it.
To sort of tie into what you said about the prequels, Aaron, is we were talking about last week, if the Lord of the Rings movies came out today, exactly the same as how they were when they came out, but released now, I think people would hate them. Most people would.
Oh, they'd be too slow.
Because they're too slow, they're not flashy enough, they're not loud enough.
The relationships between the characters might be too effeminate.
Yeah.
And I actually, I think in this day and age,
people would think they look kind of dated.
Yeah.
It would not get the same reaction.
All of the interesting things are now going to streaming. And as Aaron said, you're getting your big popcorn movies, they're going to the cinema. And...
that's what we've talked about before. How everything in the mainstream cinemas is Marvel movies or superhero movies and kids animated movies. Yeah. And for the interesting indie dramas, you have to go to a smaller cinema like the Nova or to streaming.
It's interesting because, like you said, Lord of the Rings. We're getting the Lord of the Rings TV show eventually, and that has like a $100 million budget. Was it per episode?
Wow.
Per. Something like that.
Yeah,
it's absolutely something
insane. Yeah.
See that the stakes are too high.
Yeah,
the stakes are too high for them to lose. So they've moved the goalposts. I think.
Yeah,
and I just want to know what that's going to look like. Is it all going to be practical, or it's all going to be mind-blowing CG?
It's something we talked about with the disappearance of the mid-budget movie.
Yeah,
where movies cost so much to make now that so much is on the line that's why they just make safe.
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. The disappearance of the mid-budget movie, exactly that.
Yeah.
I've noticed that gone. That's a big part of my life that no longer is there.
It's like, we have Aaron here who's on the other end of the spectrum and he's making money. He's making a movie on no money and a shoestring budget. It's either you have that or you have a $100 million movie.
Yeah. It's low budget or high budget.
Yeah.
Why does Jeff Bezos get to spend $100 million per episode on something which is probably going to suck?
Because he doesn't pay his workers.
Well, yeah, but poor Aaron
or his taxes
doesn't, is having trouble getting his films made.
Yeah.
And your script was a good script. You know what I mean? it's not. I feel like it's
that's
too
the thing is-
capitalistic. Where
I mean,
we're having trouble getting movies made.
Yeah.
But then Jeff Bezos can spend $100 million.
but he's got the capital to do it
Yeah.
on his own. But it's the thing is like if it's risky, if it's not going to make its money back because it's not based on something or it's not easily recognizable.
Fan base doesn't come baked in already.
Yeah, or it does something weird like we were just talking about where a movie should take more risks and be more weird.
Yeah.
Then no one's going to take a chance on it.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. And the screenwriter William Goldman wrote that book, Adventures in the Screen Trade, in about 1985 maybe. And in that book, he said nobody knows anything. And what he meant by that was he said that you can take the successful business model of another film and you can replicate that business model. So you can get the same director, the same sort of stars and all that sort of stuff. And what he's saying is that you don't know what you've got until it gets put in front of the audience.
Yeah.
That you can yield an entirely different result with the same business model.
Yeah.
And my feeling was that the studios accepted that for a long time. But when they started spending over $100 million, $300 million and so forth on a film, I think the investors have gone, sorry, I don't put $300 million on the table and you tell me nobody knows anything.
Actually, no, there is one holdover from this. We've got A24.
Yeah, but they make smaller budget films.
And I would say Blumhouse, even though
But
small,
those movies cost nothing to make.
Well, they go into we'll say they can go into like the 10 to 50 million.
That's low budget.
Low budget, yeah. No, but you see, we're talking about like your mid-budget movies. Like they still look like. Here's the one example of like a filmmaker that can still make a decent, really good-looking movie for under like 150, $200 million.
I don't think that's a good example, but like what I think that like we talked about how like movies like a lot of times we review a movie, even Astro Loco, your movie, like, and we say if this just had a few more bucks, it could be amazing, but it just didn't have that to cross the finish line. But in saying that, I think most movies cost too much money.
Yeah.
All these big Hollywood studios are spending $300 million on a movie and taking no risks and just banking it on the noticeable IP, like the recognizable name. When I think they should be scaling back budgets and being like, look, what can we do practically? What can we do sort of so that there's less risk if this flops? Because one example, probably the example I like to use is, do you remember John Carter?
Yeah.
That cost like $300 million to make and flopped.
Yeah.
And they lost all this money and they're like, oh, we're never doing anything like this ever again. But that movie should have cost 50 to 100 million. It should have been a more practical, Conan the Barbarian in space kind of thing.
You can give a director...
And whether it lost money, whether it tanked or not, it wouldn't have lost as much money as them making this big CGI superhero epic that they did.
A studio can give a production $100 billion, but that doesn't mean they're going to invest it properly. So if you remember, like, again, to bring up Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, there's a scene where there's a fight on a complex, like not an apartment, it's like an
office building.
An office building.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where Awkwafina's character is hanging off a bamboo pole and it's starting to bend.
Scaffolding, yeah.
And it's all CG. And so the thing James was talking about, like, do you remember Rush Hour, where Jackie Chan is like literally hanging off
the bamboo
thing?
Yeah.
Now it's probably cheaper and looks better to actually get a bamboo thing, set up a green screen underneath, and do it as practically as you can, rather than CG everything. Which CG is expensive, if I'm not mistaken. Like when you get to the Marvel level,
but
of CG,
as we discussed, as Aaron was saying, it's more controllable.
Yeah.
So there's less that can go wrong, and they can.
But it's also like way more expensive in some cases.
Yeah,
because you don't have to spend $100 million to get a bamboo and a guy to hang off it. Over a short drop.
I also think people respond differently when they know the skin in the game. Like if you watch something like Ong Bak or The Raid or something like that. I mean, The Raid. I mean, these guys are destroying themselves on screen for this film, and you know that when you're watching that, and you feel that energy because you know that these dudes are going to be sore in the morning, and you just watching a CG things fly and bouncing around on the screen. You just don't feel that.
We always talk about that.
That's why we love Tom Cruise so much.
We always talk about on the show is like we're missing those days when action movies felt like people were fighting or actually getting hurt. It's like stunts were practical. It's like it felt grounded. It felt realistic. Whereas now all the stunts are just green screen CGI. And it's like, well, that had no weight to it. That had no...
Yeah.
Because it can pull you out of the fantasy of the film, too. If you see something that looks like has an inherent sense of wrongness to it when you're watching it, like in, again, Shang-Chi, I shouldn't keep bringing it up, they added in 3D, stereoscopic 3D into the film.
That was weird, though.
And like 3D's dead, let it go for a start.
Yeah.
But like it looks weird. Everything takes on a rubbery kind of appearance to it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know it until Nathan was actually doing some research into it.
No, we were watching the movie and there were some 3D effects, and I'm like, that looks like it's meant to be in 3D because like the effect would come sort of straight on the camera.
Yeah.
And it looks weird. And then we're watching the credits roll, and there's like stereoscopic 3D credits, and I'm like, that's why.
Yeah, and it can pull you out of the film. Whereas if you're watching a film which doesn't rely on CG so much, you're kind of more in that world.
Yeah, but that was a case of having a specific gimmick that for some reason we thought was dead, and that was still trying.
I'm like,
whoever made that decision, I don't know.
Is it big in certain markets?
Maybe there must be an Asian market where it's still big, or
here's
something.
an Asian market that's still really big on 3D, and they're just like tailoring certain effects.
Weird.
Like they don't even release 3D on Blu-ray anymore.
No,
What's the end game?
Yeah.
Like it feels like a large investment for a very short payoff. Because most cinemas don't do 3D anymore in the West anywhere. At least in Australia they don't. I'm like, it seems like a lot of effort for a reasonably small return.
It's a weird decision.
Unless it was a future-proof decision.
Maybe it was like, I know, maybe they're just like, look, Avatar 2 is coming soon.
Yeah.
they're gonna dust off the 3D projectors again soon. We're gonna be ready.
They're thinking ahead. Yeah.
The second coming of 3D.
What's it called? The metaverse?
Yeah.
That's a thing now, apparently. So everything's going to be 3D.
Oh, God. Go to the movies with your metaverse glasses so they can watch you watch movies.
I watched like 20 minutes of an episode of Brand New Tree Flavor with my VR headset. Sitting in the Netflix app, you get to like this couch, this huge TV. So I'm watching it in like 480p. Because we're not quite... Don't worry, when we get to the point where VR headsets are in like 4K, like I'll watch shit in effects cinema. Oh, my God.
But what? Why?
For the novelty, James.
Look, you're part of the problem.
Have you ever sat in one of those? I'm not sure what they call them. Are they DMX seats or what are they? Those?
Oh, they have in the shopping centre sometimes.
No, they got the. It's like 4D, not 4D.
I've never even seen one. They have like a bunch of actuators that jostle you about while you're in the chair while you're watching the film.
Do they even have them in Australia?
No,
I think they do at Waverley Gardens. I think.
There's a little trivia thing. There's a company who's actually trying to get this off the ground, where it's a little, it's like you get those electronic walking machines.
Treadmill.
Yeah, treadmill, electronic treadmills. Walking machines.
You can tell Callum's never walked in his life.
Yeah, I know. There's a company who wants to get that done reasonably cheap, but it lets you walk in all directions and duck and jump.
Yeah, they have
them
for VR games. Yeah. Like I've seen videos.
So they're trying to make them real cheap. Like I know the Zuck is trying to get haptic gloves real cheap as well.
Yeah.
So
eventually the technology will get to that point, but now it's still in its infancy.
Apparently Mark Zuckerberg's going hard into VR now, and they spent millions of dollars trying to come up with a VR glove, and they couldn't do it. They don't have the technology for an affordable, like just one that's obviously not like as big as like this room, right?
Yeah.
But something like it just looks like a glove that you can use in VR. They couldn't do it.
Yeah.
They threw millions of dollars at it and they couldn't do it. So now phase 2 is they're researching materials and ways to make it happen.
They reckon 10 years.
Yeah, it's still a ways off.
But until they override the optical nerves, like
honestly,
we'll play our tabletop game.
As long as you have to put things on your head, like I don't think VR is gonna
just plug it into the skull.
The VR glove. I mean, have you played a PlayStation 5? If you held a PlayStation 5 controller?
Yeah.
Did you find that just...
I know, it's crazy. It's like the 3D... The way it's explained to me by my boss at work is it's 3D sound if you could feel it.
And I'm like, that's a good descriptor.
But it's not though, is it? I mean, you're playing a game and this thing's just like buzzing around in your hands and you go, what's this? What am I holding?
Yeah. It depends on the game. So there's a game called Returnal. and it
Yes,
primarily
I've played Returnal. Yes.
it's good, isn't it?
Yes.
Like I love how the guns have different weights to it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, that's
incredible.
good. But the actual vibration mechanic, I'm just going. It doesn't sell it to me. This thing can't vibrate in a particular way that's going to make me feel immersed.
It's kind of like when they released the Switch, and they're like the Joy-Con feels like you got a dice in it, or you got an ice cube in it, and it's like no one used that feature. So there's still this gimmicky. We're still in this gimmicky fad period of like it hasn't got to that point yet where it's like this actually can integrate well into games.
Yeah, I can't remember what game I was playing on Wii. It might have been a Zelda game or something. I'm supposed to be swinging this controller around like it's a real sword or something. And I'm going, if I wanted to swing a real sword around, I would go and take up, I don't know, kendo or something like that. I want to sit in my beanbag and not move.
Relax. Yeah, you want to play games to relax, not so you can get a
Sorry, our producer Christian just walked in.
Silent producer. Hey guys,
Christian on.
He doesn't
he's
talk.
too embarrassed to talk.
He produces. He doesn't.
Podcast.
What was the last movie you watched, Christian?
Christian, this is Aaron.
Aaron directed the sci-fi
Christian
comedy.
nods his approval.
Aaron directed the sci-fi comedy movie Astro Loco. Go watch it.
We're out of time, but thanks again to Aaron for coming in. We talked over you the whole.
I'm sorry.
That was great. It was great.
Look,
but,
it is what it is. We do it to each other.
Yeah, this is what we do.
sorry.
Once we get talking about movies, it's like can't stop.
I actually feel like I got my fair share.
Okay, good. But yeah, thanks for coming in. We do appreciate it. Everyone listening, make sure to watch Aaron's film Astro Loco. It's on Amazon Prime, Tubi, and Google Play.
Correct.
And you can also follow the movie on astrolocomovie.com.
Yep.
And Astro Loco Movie on Facebook.
Yep. And something like that on Instagram as well.
And Instagram. And yeah, we're all excited to see if you have anything in store next. So yeah hopefully we'll have you back in the future.
I'd love to come
Star Wars meme will monitor your career with interest.
Thanks for listening, everyone. This is just like a short bonus episode. We might upload sometime. You can like and share our Facebook page and all that. You know the drill. I think.
You can catch us as always in the same locations you got this episode.
People, yeah. If you listen to this weird bonus episode, you're probably a dedicated listener. You know all the stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks to Aaron again. Adios, cousins.